February 10th, 2025. A great day indeed as we have Growlcoin on the rise. Stonks are up. The cats are rising, completing Molten Core multiple times, carrying Mizkif to success. How's everybody's week been?
Crypto is not looking up, but it's been all right. I don't know. I've just been sick. I've been exhausted, man. So sorry if I've low energy to yell at the mole people this episode. We're gonna need Squishy to go on some rants.
Dude,
I don't rant.
when are you coming back to retail, Growl?
Dude, I want to. I don't know, man. Just sick. I just can't. It's hard.
Just waiting for next patch, too.
Sort of, yeah. Like, I need that little kick of energy, you know? I think once I get going, maybe it'll be better, but, like, dude.
Once you get drafted,
exhausting.
Get drafted for some keys. Get in the season 2 dungeons.
Yeah, I mean, last season was so tough. Let me see the quote. Apparently, for comparison's sake, Growl is an Omega Sweat MDI winning M+ player, and even he was not able to get cutting edge this tier.
Who said
that?
Hold on. Who said that?
It was in some big drama thread about Meteos, I think, about classic stuff.
And they're flaming you for not getting cutting edge?
Well, they're basically like trying to talk about how good of a player you are to be able to get cutting edge this tier, and they use me as an example to say that even I couldn't get it.
I mean,
I think you would have got it in a different guild.
Yeah, or if I just was willing to stick it out. I mean, our guild did kill it.
Or if
our
you
guild killed it
cared.
a bunch of times.
yeah,
I mean, it's just funny. I don't know.
it's kind of,
to be fair, I don't have it. They're not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of right because you quit because it took too long, but it's not that you couldn't have gotten it.
I mean, hey, the commenter's not wrong.
Yeah. Also, for some reason, Blizzard decided to fix the Sturdy Love Fool from being dropped in Indoors and Mythic Plus. I wish they would just, like, wipe all of the buffs and the debuffs and meta and everything off of players, but instead, for some reason, we're just not allowing the Sturdy Love Pool to be dropped in dungeons anymore. So my tip from last week's dead.
Dude, you know the best part is that for a lot of the casuals, they're trying to get the Love is in the Air meta achievement, which requires you to put that thing down in certain places like Battlegrounds or Naxxramas, and you just can't now. So that meta is busted. You have to use the not the toy, but like the disposable version now in order to get that achievement. And a lot of casuals are complaining about it because you just can't drop the disposable love toy anymore.
That's
very
so
funny.
It's stupid.
But also in exploit news, have you guys seen the latest exploit, the weekly exploit update?
The weekly exploit of the Bench podcast.
How do we have one every week? What is happening?
Yeah, so this week is a Necrotic Wake exploit. And you'll see here there's a very interesting class and composition for this dungeon, which allows very, very high damage.
So is he 2 Frost DKs, a Prop Pally, and a Brewmaster, and then a Disc Priest? So they cook something up.
So
yeah, the Brewmaster is critical to this exploit, and you are not accidentally doing this exploit. It's very similar to the Outlaw Rogue one from the beginning of the season, but it causes very, very high DPS.
Is the exploit that he's somehow 638 item level with 500 score?
I'm pretty sure that the Brewmaster just needs to exist for like 5 seconds, and then the dungeon will be completed without them.
Oh, that's
it's.
I mean, look at the
weird.
Look at the polls. Okay, first off, by the way, if you're gonna exploit, don't be a dumbass and have the Raider IO add-on that tracks like what polls you've done. Like,
I mean, Blizzard isn't banning; it's clear.
But also, just don't be stupid. Like, I
don't know. No, I mean,
you're already exploiting.
No, I think it's fair. No, never mind. Put it on there.
Yeah, I mean, put it on there.
I mean, they're not hiding nothing, right? You see that, and you're like, "What are they doing?" And you're like, "Well, here you go. Here's our route." Like, what are you supposed to say to that? Don't do that. Like, I don't know. You can do it.
I mean, how many more exploits are we going to get to before the end of the season? Like, we're running out of time here, but surely we can get one more in.
Yeah, we seem pretty safe at about 1 per week here.
Do we think they're going to do anything? I'm pretty sure the answer is no.
I mean, no. The answer, I mean, for sure, that's just a joke. That's a meme question at this point.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the answer has to be no, right?
But don't worry. Just don't exploit rep at the start of season 2, and you'll be fine. They'll ban for that, but just don't multi-box. You know, the number of people that got banned for just flat out multi-boxing without like knowing they were exploiting and got banned. Oh my god.
Well, didn't they said they were taking a new stance on exploits and were going to be more diligent about banning people, and then they just fucking didn't.
I mean, Dorky's opinion at the beginning of the season was right, and everybody laughed at him. But he basically said, if you exploit and you're in the race to world first, then you're banned, and then who cares about anybody else? And it probably extends to like TGP or whatever too. Like if you're exploiting in TGP, then you're banned, but nobody cares. Which is like silly, but if you think about it, I don't really think it's that bad. Like obviously the best answer is for them to fix the bugs, right? Like I'm not trying to like brush it under the rug and saying there's nothing Blizzard can do here, but if they're gonna if they're really this far behind and getting disowned by bugs, like they can't just be gunning down like random people for doing a dream surge before a key.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest factor with these exploits is like how easy is it to accidentally come across and like use/abuse, right? Because if it's something that you can accidentally do, I mean, I don't think you would ever.
You're not accidentally doing this one.
Well, so the way I see is it comes down to like timing. So for example, like let's say they have a bug, patch hits, and then there's some bug where it's like pretty obvious you have to exploit it. And then you're just like hammering it, right? First day you go into keys, you're just, getting all the IO score, getting all the gear, killing mythic raid bosses. Like, to me, that's like turbo bannable no matter what.
Of course.
I think if now you're a week in and this bug has been around for a week and Blizzard hasn't done or said anything, people are doing it. It's like at what point they're at some point you're an idiot for not doing the bug, right? And so I think like there's some time threshold of like, I don't know, 48, 72 hours where if a bug is in the game and it's like common knowledge and people are just like doing it on Twitch and like there's logs of it, and it's like, the Blizzard isn't doing anything, like, I don't know. At what point is it not like if you can't beat them, join them?
I mean, these bugs honestly just shouldn't exist. Also, I think Blizzard should have some preventative measures from allowing these runs to like take place.
They just need to flag and counter. What is it? Encounter start at the start of every dungeon, which they do, but like it doesn't wipe resources on some classes. They definitely should wipe buffs and force you to reapply them.
Yeah,
they just don't.
I agree. Like, I mean, it's kind of like the sturdy love pool thing. For some reason, they just don't allow you to drop a sturdy love pool. But the real answer is just don't let you maintain any buffs or resources on dungeon start. Like.
There has to be some coding tomfoolery. Why? I mean, I really couldn't even tell you.
I think it's
just baffling at this point.
I think it's because they like worry that you wouldn't have your raid buffs or something. People don't want to rebuff at the very beginning of a dungeon. I think it's probably something like that, where it's nice quality of life to already be able to like pre-buff and pre-food and stuff like that. Please, I don't care. Just wipe everything.
Then you're forcing everyone to zone out, queue up for story mode again.
Oh yeah, true. You got to go back to story mode and get all your world buffs.
Yeah.
Your raid buffs. Sorry, too much classic.
Okay. In other news, you guys see that they changed the Dinar stuff, and they also commented on the raid skip thing that we were really heavily trying to figure out. Yeah. Would it be abusable or not? So basically, Blizzard decided that the Dinar was going to be removed from the Renown track at Renown levels 17 and 19. They haven't stated as how it's going to work. This was data mined originally, and people got like really up in arms about it. But then Blizzard comes out with this blue post. They state that it has been removed from the Renown track. However, it's still going to happen. We just don't know what it's going to necessarily be attached to. They're going to have more details in the future. And in other news, they also changed some of the Renown items. Where the fixer-upper repair stations that were previously present at rank 5 have been removed. There's like, whatever, this doesn't feel satisfying, so it's been removed. And then they changed the raid skip, and it now requires Muggsy to have been defeated on that individual difficulty, and was previously any difficulty. We've heard a lot of feedback in both directions here. We've also heard that 7 weeks would be too long for certain guilds to normally clear higher difficulties quicker. But basically, they made it to where you weren't just going to be skipping straight to Muggsy, I think, if you killed the raid in Heroic.
Yeah, when it comes to the raid skip, initially I thought it was really weird, but at the same time, I mean, people could do it before, right? Like, literally week 3, you could have, or whatever week, like, people started getting those skips, you could just bring any of those people into some lower ranked guild, right? And just activate the skip. All it takes is one person. And if you really wanted to, you could get a full guild of people to skip the boss.
Yeah.
And no one ever did it. Like, there wasn't really a point to it. Like, maybe, I don't know. To me, that wasn't a big deal. It was a little weird, but it's fine change. I think it's funny that the Dinar thing, they have to put in the paragraph, don't worry, we're not taking them away. We will do something, like, because people are gonna get mad if they remove the dinars. Like, dinars is like gotta be one of the big words that like everyone wants it. It's just like the greatest thing ever. Blizzard needs to do this, and so the fact that they put them in there and then snuck them out, it's like now they have literally they didn't even put them in yet, right? It was just data mine patch notes, and now I feel like their hands are already tied where they have to do something with them.
A couple things with the dinars. One, I think it's funny how people still call it dinars. Like, nobody knows what a puzzling cartel chip is, but everybody knows what dinar is. But secondly, what?
I was gonna say, who cares about a Boolean either?
Like, I think this is probably good for Blizzard in a couple ways. One, it allows them to detach it from the raid specifically. I think the only reason that it only rewarded raid items was because it was on the raid track. And, one of the major complaints was that it didn't include Mythic Plus items. And if it's not part of the raid track, there's a possibility that this will actually act like a regular dinar or Boolean now. And you can buy anything, possibly. I don't know anything about it.
That's what you're cooking. You're thinking that there's a chance that they do the same thing with it. They still have the same timeline, and they just end up detaching it from the raid thing to give them an excuse to put it with Mythic Plus stuff.
How I read this was a little bit different. How I read this was they don't want to be tied to leaving it on the renown track permanently if they decide that they don't like how the Dinar plays in the future during like regular seasons. And that's kind of what I read into it when I said it in hopes of not bearing the lead, right? Where they don't want it to be tied to renown track. It's kind of like we were talking about a few weeks ago, how it's difficult to walk back on quality of life updates. Like, people still talk about mass res and mass summoning, even still to this day, whenever those things got removed from all the players. And I think that the Dinar being attached to a renown track, that seems like, again, I think we're all kind of in agreement that they're probably going to be keeping the renown track for the raid moving into the future. Having the Dinar there in one season and removing it for the next, people would be really annoyed, I do think.
I mean, that's still probably going to happen if this happens. Now it's even more like off the renown track. This could be a game-wide system that they'll having trouble removing. But I think the thing that it gives them as well is some flexibility of when to put in the Dinar. It could be with, 11.15. It could be, this week we're just going to hotfix it in. This feels about the right time. We're just going to hotfix it in.
Yeah, it does give them some freedom there. That's true. Like, they can just, for lack of a better term, pull the ripcord and just give people dinars like at any point. Whether it's 2 weeks in or 2 months in or the same time.
I mean, these are really late into the patch, right? Week 16 and 18 into a patch. I mean, I feel like, I don't want to say most, but I feel like a lot of people were like, you could probably do it like a month or so earlier and it would be okay.
That's kind of why this is such a nothing burger, is because it was already so late, right?
Yeah.
And it's already like, they're not really giving you much here. Like, this is just throwing you a bone if you're still playing this late in the patch.
The big copium is, I really liked it when the Race to World first happened and finished, and the community benefited from it. Like, you got the legendary when the Race to World first concluded in
the Nar Zero?
Dragonflight. Yeah, like I think it'd be really cool if something unlocked when the Race to World first finished. Like, can you imagine? Race to World first over, everybody now gets a Dinar when they complete this new quest line.
Oh, Dinar!
That would be crazy.
Smokes.
A week 2 Dinar is nuts.
Okay, they're like,
I love the idea.
I know.
There's no way it would be a Dinar.
I don't think it'll be a Dinar, but just as that's copium. But I like the idea, and I would love to see that come back in some form.
I mean, overall, I felt like all the stuff that they said in this blue post, this was all felt fine to me. I actually think they're moving this renown track in the right direction. I think this is actually going to end up being pretty good.
Yeah. The raid script, I didn't touch on that. Radar.io and WoW Progress, I'm pretty sure both rank based on total kills in the raids, so I don't think this is going to affect anybody, regardless if this was implemented or not.
Interesting.
Right? Do they not go off of total kills?
I mean, I guess you're right. So I guess in theory, if a guild doesn't kill a boss, they're just never ranked.
Yeah.
I have no idea actually how that works. This is a new one for me. What I will say is it's a little bit weird too that people get so attached to things that haven't actually hit live. Like people got
that's World of Warcraft.
I mean, I guess it's like part of everybody being so in the know all the time, I guess is the best way of describing it, where they already have this idea that you should be able to get this puzzling cartel chip from the renown track. That seems like such a weird thing. And for Blizzard's end, it comes off like then they can't announce anything until they're like, all right, we're dead set on this.
Yeah, I mean, I really, really hate this meta. Like, I hate the whole, like, data mine stuff and everybody sees everything. And not to blame, Wowhead or whatever, because if one site doesn't do it, another site will, right? Like, it has nothing to do with Wowhead.
It
has
WoW
to do with,
thing.
like...
Yeah,
and I'm not a super computer hacker guy. Like, I don't know how easy it is to get around this. I'm assuming it's not very easy because they don't. But yeah, to me, the whole, like... I don't know. When it comes to RPGs and MMOs or whatever, I just think that the unknown and like the discovery part is so fun. And as players, we're going to spoil it. Like we're all going to ruin it for ourselves, no matter what. Because we want that advantage. We want to know. We love the game. Like get us in there. We're fiends. In my opinion, it's kind of up to Blizzard to hide that from us, to keep that spark and that enjoyment and that that magic of undiscovered things in the game. And I feel like they randomly do it, and when they do it, it feels so good, right? Like, didn't it feel awesome when Plunderstorm came out and no one knew anything that was going on, or like when the secret mount hunts or whatever get figured out? Like the very few times they do it, always feels so good, but it's like. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it should happen way, way more often.
I would love if WoW had blind rating.
Blind rating?
I would honestly love it. I mean,
I think all the content would just be straight up better if it was blind, like dead ass. But I don't think that they can actually quality assure that is the problem, right?
Yeah, I mean, their end bosses have not been that buggy recently. And they don't test those.
Their end bosses are good. Actually, I don't really have complaints about their end bosses in terms of, whenever we first saw that they were going to not test end bosses, we thought they were going to be just like shambles, but they were all fine.
What was the last end boss they tested? They didn't test Sark. Did they test Razageth?
It was a tier 4 jailer.
Oh god, what Shadowlands 2? Sylvanas?
Yeah, it had to be Sylv.
So they test this like it for a while. I'm pretty sure no like major things have gone wrong with end bosses.
They never tested mythic end bosses, but they tested heroic, and then they stopped testing heroic end bosses, right? So the last heroic end boss that they tested was Sylv, and then they stopped on Jailer.
Okay, Jailer was a little bit of a mess, but like every other end boss has gone over well. I'm pretty sure.
I'm gonna go for the random Final Fantasy glaze while the game is dead and no one cares about it right now. I feel like the idea of preserving old raids and having old raids doable as they were is really, really cool. And I feel like that's one of the few situations where blind raiding could exist. You know what I'm saying? Like, I understand the surge of everybody wanting to get the raid done and like care about the current raid, but like, imagine if you could just be like, okay, right now we're all bored as shit. Like, what if we just like, who hasn't done Throne of Thunder before? Like, what if we just did like a heroic Throne of Thunder blind like thing, right? And we just gathered like 20 people and we just did it, and it was like. I feel like that could be a fun event, I mean, it wouldn't be like a hard difficulty, like it wouldn't be like current mythic difficulty, but just like heroic,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that whole idea of being able to progress old raids as they were would be really, really, really cool, and it would give sort of that. I mean, I know there's not a big market for it. Like, I understand there's not a lot of people that would do it, but it's at least something, and it might open that idea to show people how fun it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think WoW is like just, I don't know. Wow, you kind of have classic if you want to do that, right? You have classic versions of the game if you want to kind of reprog it as it is.
BRD.
Yeah, it's just so much more situational, right? Like, you would basically have to prog only the. I mean, what would your options be right now? Your options would be Molten Core, and then whatever the current raid is in Kata, so like Firelands. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's something. I guess the nice thing though is you get to use your current character, right? Like imagine if I asked you like, "Yo, Tettles, you want to do Firelands?" And then it's like, well, you have to boost your guy, and then you have to do heroic dungeons and gear it and shit. Like, yeah, you'd be like, I'll pass on that one.
Yeah.
But who knows? Like maybe if we had a fun group of people and it involved one weekend, you might be like, yeah, sure, fuck it. Like, let's see what Firelands was like.
I think heroic BRD. No one cared about that raid. It was not ranked. A lot of groups went it blind.
Ah, dude, I say that I didn't even do it. I didn't do one boss in BRD.
Dude,
I'm just talking out of my ass right now.
It was the most fun raiding experience I've had in a very long time. Like
people got really mad because they said it was too hard.
I know, but for me, it was lots of fun. Like they did raid testing for that while like Prague was going on, and nobody tested it.
Nobody test that shit.
And it was fine. It was the fights were good. They had a very unique like gauntlet running like trash kill boss encounter that we haven't seen in like retail in ages. They were unique fights. There was one that was just a massive shit show, and that was okay. But like for what it was, I don't think they need to test. I wouldn't be like. I would love to see them just encrypt like Plunderstorm an entire raid tier until the day of, and just release it.
God. I'm down. I think that would be so cool.
It would be so much fun. Like, even having the dungeon journal, you can find out a lot of information about how a boss goes. You know, people find out how Ansarek goes. People are already looking at how Gallywix happens, you know. But going into 8 bosses completely blind, not knowing a damn thing other than we're doing this general raid, that would be amazing.
I think that would also allow them to come back a little bit on the difficulty of the raid if you don't like know anything about it in advance.
Yeah,
I think that like a huge issue is like if you're blind progging something you haven't seen the mechanics before, there's basically like there's only so much prep you can do if you've never seen a boss.
Yeah. And prep and figuring things out is part of the difficulty in other games.
Yeah.
How do we create the strategy for this?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas WoW's, you've removed the majority of that. It's all execution.
What do you think about the size of raids and the whole, like, do you think there's any world where, like, imagine if they just made raids a lot smaller on average, but put them out more frequently?
You're talking about the size in terms of how many bosses.
Yeah, how many bosses? Like, what if on average a raid had, like, 3 to 6 bosses? Like, a 6-boss raid was, like, a big boy. And then, like, they would... I feel like... And then they just kind of... The problem is, like, I guess Race World... Like, the way people play WoW is, like, so big around the raids. And, like, maybe they feel like they need to put out this huge raid. Because, like, imagine if they put out a patch and then it's like, okay, Race World first. And then the raid goes down in one day. And, like, you know, people are done with the bosses. Or, you know, I don't know. To me, I guess that feels just a little bit weird of, like... Oh, we sit here for 6 months or 7 months and do nothing, and then we get all these bosses, and it's just like this huge pile of information. And then, like, I don't know, maybe if they smoothed it out a little bit more and had like more frequent releases of raids, and yeah, I don't know. That's always been my complaint about the content release cadence is that it's so standardized. It's like, all right, new expansion, 8 new dungeons, and a raid with 8 bosses, and then okay, next patch, new raid with 8 new bosses, and then like, you know, whatever with the dungeons. Oh, here's the mega dungeon, here's the next raid, and it's like, you know, what if they just randomly like, oh, here's a 5-man, you know, 5-man 2-boss raid, like, you know, some sort of mini dungeon thing, or like, oh, what if there's just 4-boss raid, like. I don't know. I feel like that would be a lot more cool and a lot more exciting for like the average WoW player. Not just like people like us, but like the people that play WoW to do dungeons and raids and stuff.
My gut reaction.
I feel like it would just allow them to experiment with so many more things, right? Because like for example, everyone talks about 10-man raiding, right? Like, what if they just came out with a 10-man 4-boss raid? Like, they're not switching raids, they're not doing anything. All it is just a 10-man raid, and they just put it out and just see how it is, you know? And it's like, it's not even, they'll literally say, we're not changing everything, we just want to do this for fun to see, and like, just to see, you know? I feel like it leaves them so much more room to experiment, whereas like, when they come out with a really bad patch, like for instance, was this Chains of Domination or whatever, like, holy crap, does that nuke the game, right? Because you're waiting for so long for that patch, and then you get the patch and it sucks, and then you're just stuck with that patch for so long, and it's like, you don't have any hope of like stuff changing.
I think you're actually onto something. I do think like immediately my gut reaction is this is like that would be good for heroic level guilds, heroic style guilds that just try to go get AOTC. Once they get AOTC, they're kind of done for the patch. Those type of guilds, I think it would be perfect for. I think that any guild that's actually trying to do any like long-term progression, it would end up being a little bit worse for, especially those who aren't super high-end, cutting-edge Hall of Fame level guilds, because you kind of need those middling bosses to have a more gradual curve. Because if you have like a really short raid, you're gonna jump between like a 30 pull boss and a 150 or 200 pull boss, something like that, right? Like, I think it'd be a little bit weird if you were in a mythic level guild.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, right? Like you'd really have to do deep thinking about the difficulty curves. Like you couldn't just keep doing the same difficulty
exactly
curves as they do currently.
But it would be great for heroic. I think that like it would be like great for heroic style guilds that their main goal is to get AOTC and then they take a break until the next tier. For those type of guilds, I think it would be phenomenal.
Yeah. But then again, BRD existed in a lot of guilds. Didn't exactly do it.
There's also maybe a question about asset creation and how much time it would take for them to actually make what a new raid would look like, kind of thing.
Well, I think we figured this out, right? We weren't sure about it back then, but I think we figured it out now. The game is just rewards driven, right? Like the problem with BRD was the rewards sucked, right?
Sure.
Yeah, all right. I bet if there was myth track gear from BRD and I was getting, whatever. Oh yeah, I bet I would have been in there. So I changed my answer. That's why I didn't do BRD, because the rewards sucked. It had nothing to do with BRD.
They had a
I need that carrot on the stick.
They put a Dinar in BRD and you're in there day one.
Yeah, Dinar and BRD. There you go.
What if that's what they're doing? Oh my god, we figured it out.
Wait, what do you mean?
Oh shit, that's what the Dinars are.
4-man raid that awards a Dinar in 11.1.5. There you go, Tettles.
Oh my god, I'm down. I don't know.
I'm down.
What do you think, Squishy, about?
I don't mind the seasonal model. I think it's just a different direction than what they're going with right now. This is obviously cyclic. It's easy. They know it works, right? Like every couple months, you release a new raid, you release some new season, dungeons, boom, done. Easy. They know it works. And I think that's what they needed after the shit show that was Shadowlands. And so they're winning back favor right now. They're trying, some low risk things like changing the renown, the raid renown track. And then at some point they're going to try to sweep the floor again. So I think right now it's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with people who play for a couple weeks or a couple months, clear the content, then just dip for a while. There's a lot more seasonal games out there now. PoE, Diablo, like TFT, League, all very seasonal games at this point. Marvel Rivals. So I think given the atmosphere of other games, this makes sense. You don't really want to have a game that forces people to commit all their time, because then people probably won't play.
That was like, that was World of Warcraft's bit for the longest time, though, right? It was the game. It was the only game that you would ever have to play if you played it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that they've kind of also proven to themselves that people will come back if they push the seasonal model. People will come back.
Yeah.
Okay,
housing. You guys see the housing news?
Yeah, speaking of huge things that they're coming up with that'll blow everybody's mind, I think this is something that everyone's banking on for sure.
People are very hopeful. I see a lot of hope in regards to what the housing is going to entail. Squishy, you want to give like a TLDR to what they've announced? There's 2 blue posts, I think, on specific housing.
Yeah, so the main housing one basically announced some. First of all, they took a shot at Final Fantasy 14. I don't know if you saw that.
That was funny. Yeah, I read that.
There's a very specific line which is like, your house cannot get repoed when you unsubscribe. There's no lottery system. Like, you're gonna be able to get a house should you want it. It seems like.
Yeah.
That's great. I think that's the only complaint with Final Fantasy 14's system, which is some people just can't use it. Other than that, there are neighborhoods, so you'll be able to see other houses. They said there are 50 plots in each neighborhood, and you can have public neighborhoods or private neighborhoods, which I think is a pretty big deal, so that you can see other people's houses and interact with them, and walk out of your house and see what other people have done with their stuff.
What happens if your neighbor's pissing you off? Can you evict them?
You might be able to evict yourself. I don't know, man. And then there's going to be lots of cosmetics, decorations, customizations via in-game, but also some from the cash shop.
Were people mad about the cash shop?
I don't think so.
I didn't see anybody saying anything about it, but I mean,
I
like,
mean, it's just going to be the average number of people that are always mad, right? Like, I think all of us knew that there was going to be some cash shop things.
I think that's fine.
Yeah.
As long as the majority of it is like in-game, I don't think it matters whether or not some of it is going to be like... Some of it is going to be not that, you know?
Yeah, so I really love the idea of neighborhoods. I think they diffused a couple problems with this. So number one is the idea of, oh, we're just getting garrisons again. While I do see some positive stuff, I'm also seeing that comment a lot, and I think that the idea of having a plot in a neighborhood with people you can choose to or not choose to be in is like kind of proves that they're going above and beyond. Above that is the social aspect of it. So a big concern with player housing, right, is everyone has their home base, right, where you hang out in. Usually it's like the main town in WoW, right? You just sit in Dornegal, you have your green light on, you let everyone know you're there so that they message you to do keys. That's like the standard, right? And now if they do player housing, everyone's going to sit in their house. Well, neighborhoods actually do have some sort of like, how would you say, social aspect to them. You know, like, let's say you're in a neighborhood with either a bunch of people that you do keys with, or a bunch of people in your guild, or if you're a totally solo player, 49 other random people, right? When you log in and you're kind of in that mode of like, oh, I'm just sitting here, you know, you probably aren't just gonna like message random people on your friends list, right? I'm not gonna be like, oh, yo, Tettles, what up, dog? You know, how you doing when I log in? Unless I'm literally trying to do keys with Tettles at that moment, I'm probably not gonna do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's say I log in and then I see Tettles and he's out there in his fucking Moonkin outfit mowing his lawn or whatever you do in the player housing, right? I might be like, yo, what up? You know, like the fact that there is neighborhood, and this is stolen from Dorky, by the way, if you've heard Dorky do this rant on stream, but like the idea, I think it's actually gonna dramatically increase the social aspect of the game because let's be honest, like Dornegal is, what do you call it? Is it still called layered? Is it phases or shards? What do you call it in retail currently?
It's phased, yeah.
Yeah, right. But the thing is, you can always phase Dornegal, right? Like, let's say there's 50 phases. Okay, well, then now there's 5 phases, right? But every phase is still going to feel the same size, and if anything, you're going to see the same people way more often, the people that don't want to hang out in their house, right? So that might even feel more homey to be in Dornegal as well. And then now if you have your neighborhood, like you'll see your buds or your guild or whoever, or just the random, whatever idiots that you decided to plot your land on because you don't really know that many people. You might see some guy and be like, oh, holy shit, this guy plays Mythic Plus too. He's got a similar rating to me. Like, he's walking around, like, let me go hit him up, I actually think that the idea of neighborhoods and like AFKing in an area where you sort of kind of pick the people that you're around and like you see them regularly, I think will actually do really, really good for the social aspect of the game. So I'm really positive on this.
I think it'd be cool if they had like a guild hall. Like if you had a private land, you could make a guild hall or something like that. That'd be so
sick.
cool.
That would be sick.
That's where you drop your cauldron, like right before the raid, then you port to the raid together. Oh.
I think that I was thinking about that a lot. I think that adds some complications because so you have a guild hall, then either A, it has to be a guild only thing, right? Or like in theory, you just have to have somebody in charge, right? Like I think the idea right now of you have your plot of land and like no one is really in charge of that neighborhood. It's just sort of like, you join it, and if you're not happy with it, you leave and you park somewhere else. Whereas like if they ever added something like a main area or I feel like that would get they would have to cook on it a lot more, and I don't expect to see anything like that on release, really.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt it. It's just kind of like a cool little thing that I personally would find interesting. But overall, I'm really hyped for the system. It sounds like what people want. It's like Final Fantasy without the lottery.
Now, I did have one question. Basically, they announced that there was going to be 2 different zones of which you can actually have your player housing. One of them is like the Elwyn Forest style one. One of them is the Duratar style one for Alliance and Horde players. But Alliance and Horde players can be neighbors to one another, right?
I think it's just cosmetic.
Theoretically, I think it says somewhere around there like you can have your horde character. They're going to be warband wide, so I assume your alliance. You need to have an alliance character to buy an alliance house, and then you need a horde character to buy a horde house.
Yeah.
But then your other warband characters can use it, which
Yeah,
is just
okay.
like fine. So
I think this is cool. I think, yeah, I do wish there was maybe something that was a little bit more guild focused. But I mean, kind of like what we talked about, we need, whenever we were talking about it, whenever they originally announced it, one of the things that we were discussing is that there needed to be some sense of community that was attached to it. And I think that this neighborhood system, while I don't think it's finished, like I think that they can still cook on it more, I think this is a good starting point at least. Any immediate things that you would add to this to make this like cooler, or do you think that what they said was like pretty much what you expected?
no, this is exactly what people want. This is exactly what I want. So
Exactly
Yeah, I'm really interested. I feel like it's one of those things where like I've never experienced a game with something like this, and so I'm really interested to see what they cook up. You know, like I don't really know how they're going to integrate things, how you're going to be able to play stuff, how you're going to be able to get access to the things. Like, are there going to be super rare things? Like, do you get something for being Hall of Fame or whatever? There's just a lot of questions that I don't really know how they're going to play out that I'm kind of interested in.
Yeah.
Because at the same time, like I don't know, like I think all the more effort and the more stuff they put in, the cooler it is, right? So I think
Yep.
it's just a matter of like how hard they cook here and like how many details they get in. And yeah, I don't know. I think
what are the customizations? What can you like? How many rooms can you have? What does the house actually look like? Like these are all I think important things that we just have no idea right now.
yeah, because I think that like there's two different elements to it, and I think that they need to be able to do both, right? Like if you're some random casual WoW player who hasn't really done much, you're maybe new to the game, but you're like, you know, you're a fucking Minecrafter, right? You want to cook in that detail, you want to sit in there for 10 hours and draw stuff up. Like you got to be able to make this killer awesome shit where like some guy walks in who doesn't know anything and is like, "Whoa," you know?
Yeah.
Like you have to have that ability to do that. But at the same time, I also think that having really customizable or not customizable, but like specific homey like detailed things about your character and your accomplishments are also cool, if that makes sense. Like being able to say like, oh, I was top arenas in this year, or I was Hall of Fame in this. Like I think like those sorts of like statues or things are cool and also would be like really really nice. But I think that, you know, they need to go both ways, right? Like they can't have like, you know, all the really cool things gated behind achievements. Like you still need to be able to cook up a crazy, you know, house or whatever just with nothing on your account or very little.
I think for me, one of the things that I would like to see is Lost Ark. I don't know about Final Fantasy, but I played Lost Ark, and Lost Ark has this feature where in your house you can put your other characters. Like you put like basically like a wax doll, essentially.
Kind of like the
wax
followers that
statues
would
to make your-
kind of like the followers that would walk around your garrison.
Kind of, except they were just stationary. But basically, you can create like whatever you want. You can make them pose or something like that, like in certain spots to show off your warband. And, you know, this is their home or whatever. I think that'd be pretty cool. Like, just show off your you know, you could have your mythic raiders in this one, your mythic clusters in this section or whatever.
Could you like sit them in chairs and like put them in places and stuff, or would they have to be statues?
I don't think so, but they were statues from what I remember in Lost Ark. But I either way, I think that's just a cool.
Well, it also like shows off the gear and stuff you have too, your transmogs and all that.
Yeah,
there's something there. I think that there's something there that's like pretty cool.
There's so much there. Like there's so much that like we can't even really fathom it, and it's like I think this is gonna be a huge indicator of where Blizzard is at, because I feel like going from Dragonflight to this expansion, I feel like they've done really well in terms of direction. They've hurt in terms of detail and speed, and you could tell that not everything was tested. They've had some bad patches, and so I feel like it's kind of up in the air, right? Like I could see them knocking it out of the park because they've been devoting so many resources to this, and I could see it coming out and being like, you know, if this is like, if the player housing comes out and it's like every other patch where it's just like buggy and it's like it gives someone a 20% damage buff that you take into the raid, and it's just like they could really miss here, but they could also really, really hit. And I think that the only way to know is just to wait and see.
Yep.
I was kind of hoping that there was going to be a housing shortage and that not everybody was going to be able to get a home. I was really hoping that I was hoping that was going to more emulate real life and I could be a landlord.
Oh, God. Oh, Lord. You have enough gold already.
Well, there's rich get richer. That's what they say, right? I was hoping to be a landlord in World of Warcraft. All right. Speaking about landlords, there's also delve updates.
What does that have to do with landlords? Can you
It
explain
doesn't.
that?
Well, the
Here I am talking about my neighbor Tettles out here cutting his lawn, and really it's just gonna be the stupid Moonkin. He has this plot of 50 houses in the neighborhood. They're all his, and he's just walking around with the stupid Moonkin feathers flopping around, being like, "Anybody selling houses?" Oh my! That's what you wanted out of this?
no, okay. For the record, that was a joke. I think the system would be terrible if they didn't allow houses for everybody. What did they change about delves, Squishy?
It looks good.
Growl, as mole person, you should champion the mole people.
Yeah, it looks good. Yeah, there's some changes. I don't think anyone's gonna play any delves or care. Yeah, it looks good.
All right, that sums it up. That's it up now. I think so. If you haven't heard, season 2 delves, there's a lot of things. All curios from this first season are going bye-bye. They're stolen or something. Brand loses them. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Something like that.
Well, there's
So
a
you
new
have to-
brand, right?
No, yeah. Please meet our season 2 delve companion, Bran. It's the same guy.
What? No, I thought there was a different guy every season.
That's what they said, but they decided to keep Bran. So you still have season 2 delve companion, Bran.
Okay.
He's probably still going to tell you not to stand in the webs, but overall, so the curios are going by. There's going to be a new set of curios, except this time you have to rank up the curios one level at a time, unlike doing just a random tier 8 delves and getting all your rank 4 curios. So no matter what, you're going to have to do a lot of delves if you want your curios up. Then they lowered the loot right there, as you can see on screen, from a tier 6 bountiful coffer, a tier 8 bountiful coffer, and a tier 8 great vault.
Mm-hmm.
Those used to be higher, they're now lower, so delve loot overall is slightly lower from those.
But obviously you still get hero track gear from the vault.
You still get hero track gear from the vault, but it used to be hero 3 of 6, 2 of 6, something like that. One of those. So you're not getting all the crests. But obviously, if you go up to 11, you now get Gilda crests instead, so that is obviously better. There's also something called a Nemesis Strongbox. I don't know what this is. And also, brand levels are now staying, since it's the same brand companion. And his level is increased to 80. And he also has a tank spec. So that Growl can actually heal in delves and,
Oh, yeah. It was at 60. I do remember now. Okay.
There you go. There's delves.
I mean, does this make you more compelled to do delves, Squishy?
No. I mean, I'll do them. I don't know how they're even going to get released for the season. So
this might be a me thing. Are there people that actually enjoy doing delves, like dead ass?
Yeah.
It's like a large set of the player base is just having fun doing delves.
When you're feeling antisocial or no one else is online, you don't feel like queuing to LFG, you probably do a delve.
Okay.
I've been in that mood before.
I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Switchy, but I think it's more of like a completionist, something to do if you've never done it before. Like, I don't think people go in there and just hammer out delves over and over and over again. But I think there's definitely sort of like what Squishy said, right? You're in that mood of like, I kind of want to play WoW, but I don't want to deal with people. Like, I want to walk around my guy. Like, hey, like maybe I'll get the all. To be honest, I don't even know what the delve achievements are, but that's what people are doing, I assume, right? They're like, let me get all my curios, let me max out my brand, let me do all the delves at this, let me try to do a plus 12 delve. Like, I assume that's the content. Like, so the replayability is still very limited, but it's just something that's there. Think of it like a really scuffed mage tower, I guess, Like, it's there, but it's not like you, like, go into the mage tower and just do the same challenge over and over again. Like, it's just something that's there that you do while you're bored, and it's like, technically you could do a lot of it, if you wanted to do all the different challenges or race, all your different characters or whatever, but that's sort of what the role that I see Delve playing.
I think for a lot of people that's the case. Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to say more, but I'm sure there's people out there that enjoy delves.
Yeah. I was like genuinely curious. Like, obviously, they're not content for me, so I don't like really care. But I was just wondering, like, is this? Do you think this is gonna end up being a hit for the people that it does end up affecting? I mean, they're nerfing the gear, but like, they're trying to create a longer path for things to do, right?
I think they're trying to do what they did with Mythic Plus, which is extend so the reward track makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not skipping over multiple levels and stuff like that. But like,
Gotcha.
I personally don't care, but to others they might. We'll see how it goes this time, because with no heroic week, a lot of people might not even do delves and go straight to Mythic Plus.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I just don't think there will be a reason to do delves. I mean, there's going to be. I think there's probably some people that the delves are better than Mythic Plus to do, but I don't think it's everybody, right? But I think delves are probably still better loot than doing M0s.
M0s are not champion.
Yeah.
So I think they're the same.
They're about the same. Okay.
I think so. I don't remember off the top of my head.
You guys see this? I found this somewhere where it says patch note lines since Dragonflight Season 2, and somebody mapped out the number of lines in the patch notes that each and every single individual class has gotten so far.
Okay, that's just bait. Number of lines?
Number of lines.
Number of lines.
That's just bait.
It's like entries, not like lines, I think.
Again, I still think that's bait.
Of course it's bait.
I mean, ability damage increased by 3% versus, 10 lines of each individual ability that they're specifically tuning. They're not exactly comparable.
I think there's a lot to gather here. DPS, half of the changes. DPS sucks. We hate DPS. And we need to get some more attention to tanks. I mean, I'm seeing some clear lines here that we need
what is that Holy Paladin line, Growl?
Well, Holy Paladin's got like 3 reworks since Dragonflight, right?
Man, Ellesmere is still not happy about Holy Paladin, too. I see his tweets now and then. Ellesmere is like, when you have the, what is it, like the carbon monoxide detector that like beeps every so often just to remind you that it's broken? Like, that's like Ellesmere's Twitter with Holy Paladin. Just once every 3 days, just like beep, and then it's just like another Ellesmere tweet about like the state of Holy Paladin and how it needs to be fixed. And it's just been beeping for like, honestly, months now.
I'm glad, dude. I saw this and I saw people taking it really serious, and they were like, "What were they saying?" They were like, "Yeah, Brewmaster Monk is completely in the fucking gutter. Look at how few changes they got. Please fix Brewmaster Monk, Mr. Blazard." And I'm just like, dude, this feels like the least relevant thing ever.
Dude, that was so funny. I remember we actually got a question on one of our podcasts. I don't remember if we answered it or not, but it was something along the lines of Brewmaster being super neglected. And I remember thinking like, yeah, I mean, it probably is, but at the same time, like tons of specs get neglected all the time. Like that was kind of our answer or whatever, if we even said it. And then literally that day, like when I went to bed, there was like some video that popped off on YouTube of like Brewmaster being neglected, like within hours after we did our podcast. And I'm like, is this a coincidence or is this actually a major problem? And then like 2 days later, there was a patch where like Brewmaster got changed. I was like, is Brewmaster fixed? I'm like, maybe I am detached from the game. Maybe I have no idea what's going on here. Maybe these brews are really, really suffering.
I think I like a more interesting stat for me would be number of like PTR builds where a spec has changed. Whether it's just a yes or no, whether something changed.
Oh, okay.
I think that would be more interesting. I don't think it'd be fully indicative, but like it would definitely help a lot more. I definitely think Brewmaster would be low on that one. But
lines are just weird because you get carried super heavily by padding, like a spec. If your spec ends up getting reworked, like look at Holy Paladin. Holy Paladin's I think been reworked twice, and like they got reworked going into Dragonflight Season 2, and I think it got reworked coming into War Within, right? So it's had major changes twice since then. So
it also depends if you get spec aura'd or they decide to tune each ability differently.
That's actually a good point. I didn't really consider that.
Because like if you get a flat 5% versus the Windwalker buffed Fists of Fury by 20%, buffed Tiger Palm by 10%, like all very different things.
Yeah, it's 5 lines versus 1, but it all kind of does the same thing.
Yeah.
All right, the next major topic. We had an interesting video about Thune, and for some reason he was. I don't know why he did this, but he recreated the
He was
Star
really
Wars
cooking
intro.
in whatever video editor he was using, yeah. So if you guys aren't familiar with Thune is like he's been like a top healer for a long time, mostly like a raid focused guy, but he's like pretty in the know. Like he pays attention to like M plus and like he's aware. He's like a really really smart dude. And basically every let's say year, he comes out with a video that's like pointing out how ridiculous healing is getting and how like the health bars are going crazy and defensive creep is terrible and he kind of is just shouting into the void at this point. Like all of his videos are like, yeah. If you look at his YouTube here, a rant on healing in the War Within. Will healing be good in the War Within? You know, and it's just like over and over and over again. He's just like showing stats of like, and this is all like very mathematical too. Like talking about how the time to kill of players and different raids and like how much damage per second relative to how much health pool everyone's taking. And it's like in general, the game is just getting really, really, really bursty, right? And while I understand that the game is going to get more difficult over time, like, we're not playing Fortnite, we're not playing League of Legends. Like, part of the reason you enjoy it in an RPG is because you are thinking, like, okay, I'm a healer and my party takes damage. Let me think, should I use an AoE spell? Should I use a single target spell? Should I use a fast spell that costs a lot of mana? And in general, like, the thinking of healing and like surviving in general is basically gone at this point. Like we're at the point now where it's like you're just at least at a higher level, your defensives are just assigned. Like it's not a matter of like, oh, I'm taking lots of damage, I should press my bark skin. It's like I'm dead, I should have pressed my bark skin. That's like how every damage event is really. And this is his newest iteration. The power creep in World of Warcraft has gone too far. And he kind of made, I don't know if the editing was a sign that this was like his magnum opus, that he was like ready to throw in the towel and this is gonna be his final video, but I don't know how much of it did you watch, Tuttles?
I watched the entire thing.
Okay.
But the funniest moment of the entire thing is that he basically announces that he's quitting raiding and apologizes to his raid leader in the middle of the video.
So this was his announcement of quitting his guild was in his video. All right.
Yeah, okay, so kind of. So immediate gut reaction, power creep in World of Warcraft. We've kind of talked about it a couple of times, how there's just like a lot that's going on. The pace of the game is really quick. Exactly what Growl said on the state of healing, but on the top of that as well, whenever Blizzard went and reworked all of the talent trees going into Dragonflight, there's basically no choice. You get everything. And that is, I think, the main thesis of this is like, this is a problem because Blizzard basically gave you your entire class in the talent tree, but the modifiers on all of the abilities and your base abilities don't do anything by themselves. And imagine how crazy it would, like, and also we've talked about it in terms of like utility before, where there's too many interrupts, too many CCs, and how that affects things, and too many defensives and how that ends up affecting things as well. That was also a part of this video, and just in terms of power creep as well. That's kind of it synthesized. I think it's probably an interesting thing to kind of go through and talk about his individual points though as well. The first thing that he brought up was this thing, and he talked about Herrick's advanced tooltips, and he talked about abilities being these things on their own, and then he hovered over Renewing Mist with this add-on enabled, which tags the ability with all the modifiers that name that ability in them, and he's got basically every single Mistweaver ability. Their like tag actually goes off the screen now. The tooltip goes off the screen completely. Which and then he's also showing like Holy Paladin damage and healing sources, and how Holy Paladin has basically 1 billion damage and healing sources.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a big thing about this, and I understand that we want WoW to have a lot of depth and rotations and be complicated, but the big problem here is that abilities right now, at least if you're, and this might be different if you're a more casual player, like if you don't give a shit, maybe people don't think about it like this, but like an ability isn't really an ability. It's more like what are you supposed to do with it, and what place does it have in your rotation? Like for example, Renewing Mist. Like Renewing Mist as a Mistweaver spell is a perfect example of like you press it and it's a heal over time. So like, okay, if you're playing any other game, you're like, okay, well, maybe if this person is taking steady damage over a period of time, then Renewing Mist is a good spell to use. Wrong. Renewing Mist is like some very complicated backbone of the engine of your ability where you use Renewing Mist and it's giving you procs and it's spreading, and then your other abilities extend the Renewing Mist, and then when you heal it cleaves on it. And it's like, it's not about what does Renewing Mist do, it's about what you do. Like, you press Renewing Mist on CD and your efficiency as a Mistweaver is judged by, are you pressing Renewing Mist over and over and over and over again, or are you missing casts? And it's like, it leaves less decision making and more just, mashing a complicated rotation. Obviously, pressing Renewing Mist over and over isn't complicated, but it's less about making a decision about, okay, what's this scenario? How do I heal it? And more about just over and over and over again, you have 17 different things you have to do, and it just feels like no matter what class you're playing, you're just juggling a bunch of things in midair trying to... There are important decisions that you have to make in the mix, but the game difficulty now is like, can you do those important decisions while juggling 17 other things at once? And like Renewing Mist is essentially a juggle spell of you just press it on CD. And I will say that they've gotten better at sort of... They're doing it very slowly, but they are removing some of these spells that don't really serve a purpose other than just you press them on CD and they just do random things and all you care about is pressing it on CD. But at the same time, there's still so many of them, and yeah, it's just complicated to the point where not very often one single spell that you press, like, oh, I press the spell and I do this. Like Typhoon is a good example, right? For druids, like you press Typhoon and you push mobs, and it's like at any point, if there's a situation where you need to push mobs and relocate things, you press Typhoon. It feels good to press. Everyone sees that you use that ability, and it affected the battlefield in some way, right? But so many abilities in WoW are not like that, where they're like, you press Vivify on Monk one time, and you don't feel that heal. You press Renewing Mist, you don't feel that. You press Enveloping, you don't feel that. Like, so many of your abilities, you don't feel when you press them, and it's just like, the only way you know how good you're doing is if you look at the damage meter or the healing meter and just, you just see your number, right? That's why everyone's so glued to that, is because, like, you're not like, oh, I just hit the gnarliest, crit this, or I hit the perfectly timed this. It's like, well, I sequenced all 40 of my buttons, and then let me stare at the damage meter to see if I did it properly.
I think, for me, I think I echo exactly what Grau says. Like, things have just gotten so complicated and away from what the base game... you think of, like, Plunderstorm. 2 abilities, or 4 abilities, 2 of each kind. You have ability 1, which you know what it does. It's maybe a dot, maybe it's damage over time, maybe it's a flat damage. You know what that is. You have a second ability, which you know what that is. Realistically, they generally don't combine in specific ways. But, you can combine them with things like, oh, if I stun this enemy, it becomes easier to hit, or my dot does more damage or whatever. But then, once you start adding in, all these additional talents, which are like ability A hits, affects ability B, and now ability B affects ability C, and A also affects C, you have this like chain of events which either matters or it affects your rotation or it doesn't. And if it matters, people are just going to accept that from the theory crafters and not know why, and people aren't going to pay attention to it. So why does that complexity even matter, other than to just dilute the majority of the population's natural thought process, essentially?
Because it's not always intuitive, right? Like, some of the spells, it's very intuitive, like, oh, this is why I need to have, like, well, this is why this button is really important. But sometimes it's like, there's this whole layer of 4 different things, and then, oh, now I understand why, like, just, very ridiculous or, like, minute things or interactions that, again, it's really hard, because I think that's part of what makes World of Warcraft really cool to a lot of people, is, like, that really big depth, and the fact that, like, you can diss people who are very good. Like, you can be that much better, and like that, having that skill expression is really, really cool. It's just dangerous in an RPG, like when it comes to League of Legends or Counter-Strike, like that's the whole point of that game, is just repeating the same game over and over and over again and just becoming more skilled. Whereas WoW, there's a little bit more to it. There's a little bit more of like, you care about your character and you're building up items and you're building up teamwork with your guild, and you're putting in work and you have consumables, and those things feel like they matter less and less and less, and it's more just about like, can you karate chop all your buttons perfectly in the right order?
I think two of the best specs for like that still have good intuitiveness are Dev Evoker and Ret Paladin. Like, I think the builder spender playstyle, while boring to a lot of people, is exactly what is very intuitive and fun for a lot of people that don't want that complexity. Like,
It's so funny that you say builder spender, because from like, someone who talks to a lot of brainiac WoW players, like they hate builder spender,
yeah.
right? Like whenever you talk to people about Dev Evoker or Ret Paladin, and I agree with you. To be fair, I agree with you that like it's very good that those exist and they're very intuitive. But when you talk to those brainiac WoW players who want things super super complex, they're like, ugh, builder spender. I hate this. Like there's so many classes that are builder spender. This is bad. Like, and then you have a class like Fire Mage, which is like. It was just unbelievable how many hours I put into Fire Mage while still having no idea what I was doing, Like it was just unbelievable to go from a blank account, nothing, all the way to plus 20s, and then be like, okay, I did it, and then turn on my stream and then have people from the Mage Discord and like Zyro be like, dude, you have no idea what you're doing. Like you're doing everything wrong. And it's like, oh.
Ooh,
my favorite, I think, is Arcane Mage right now, at which you literally cannot play that spec at optimal capacity unless you have a weak aura telling you when to Arcane Barrage. You need a weak aura to tell you when to Arcane Barrage. Ever since the reworks, you need it. Like, there is such a specific set of circumstances that is very difficult to optimize that there is just an Arcane Mage weak aura that just tells you when to barrage.
I think the PvPers were right. The PvPers were right about us only using weak auras, and the weak auras play the game for us.
But like,
yeah,
you compare that to Dev Evoker, I don't think you need an add-on to play, or like a weak aura to play Dev Evoker at all.
I don't use weak auras at all whenever I play my dev.
Yeah, I don't think you need it.
You have to be able to see your essence. That's about it, right?
Even then, you don't care. You can see that. You can see the cooldown on your bar. The only thing is maybe like a hover one, but like,
oh yeah, maybe.
It. And you could probably do without that for minimal amounts of like loss. So I completely agree. They're like, things are just complicated right now.
Do we think that encounter design is to blame, or do we think that encounter design is like a result of how crazy classes have gotten? Like, what? I guess kind of like the which came first, the chicken or the egg conversation. Like which? Because I feel like it's the classes that became crazy, and then the encounters had to match how crazy the classes were. But
I think the encounter design is caused by the high ceiling and the low floor of certain classes.
Okay.
In that, especially Mythic rating, the fights are very clearly, despite what they say, the fights are very clearly tuned for Race to World First, especially in their kill power. They may say they're not, but they are. And, when you don't have the classes or the class knowledge or anything like that to perform at a Race to World First level, or even anything close to it, you start falling off really quickly and the fights become very, very difficult. And I think that's just been an arms race that also needs to be disarmed.
I think Razageth, like what you see on screen right here, is like a pretty good example of like how crazy all the classes have gotten. Pretty much every single class except for Priest and Paladin could do this movement on Raz whenever you're getting pushed back. Can you imagine like if you sent this back to like 2016? Like how many classes are actually staying on this platform? Like it's very few of them are actually going to be able to stay on the platform. DK wouldn't even be able to Death's Advance every other time.
Yeah.
Like
Bro, how many hardcore classes we lost in this fight?
We'd be dead. Oh yeah,
they're all dead.
Just the swirlies alone would kill half the classes. Oh, this mechanic? Oh, it's
over. Yeah. But I mean, that orb mechanic is also a great example. Every single player has to press multiple CCs on these orbs. These orbs have to get hit 3 times a piece, right? Which is crazy.
Yep.
And so yeah, now basically everybody has everything, but it's so people talk about homogenization of classes a lot, but I don't even think that this is homogenized like that. I feel like this is just like something with whenever they gave the talent trees, and you see this with reworks as well. Whenever people get their spec or their class reworked, what is the first thing Blizzard does? They change all of your 2-point nodes and make them 1-point nodes, and so there's no more decision making as to what you have or don't have. You just have everything.
Yeah. It's funny because you think about back in the day, think back to N'Zoth, think back to Jailer Argus, Those were immunity fights back in the day.
Oh my god, I hated those.
The issue with raid fights was immunities, where you could immune a mechanic, mage, paladin, rogue, etc., and you would have, the ability to skip mechanics. That was the big class like one up back in the day. Now, on the other hand, obviously immunities still matter, but a lot of things now, go through immunities, or it's split damage and you can't solo soak, or a bunch of things there, right? Like now it feels like they can barely do a root mechanic because every class can fucking break roots, except for priest.
Okay, so I'm interested in hearing Growl's thoughts on this. These are direct quotes from Thune's video. Priest is stuck in 2016. Now they're reliant on things like spatial paradox and spell wording to be able to perform their ramp. And you have no kick in one AOCC. Try going into do a 12 on a disc priest versus any other class and see how that plays. What do you think about that, Growl?
I mean, it's funny to say. It's like true and it's not true, right? Like I think the idea that priest is like relying on all these things is like 100% true, but it's like at the same time it's like a little ridiculous how much, like before I remember it being a thing where druids could move when they tranked, and like the whole idea that like druids could do a lot of healing on the move while they were tranking, on top of druid already being a pretty mobile class, was like a specialty they have,
Mhm.
But nowadays it's like, yeah, your priest is literally handicapped and it just like can't even move around, and it like requires all these externals and stuff to do anything. I mean, I've always been hating on the fact that how much movement plus healing is required. Like I think that's an okay thing to pull sometimes, but it just feels like so constant and so many different mechanics and bosses and dungeons. Yeah, I mean, again, I prefer the game to be simple. Like, I like the idea that, maybe Disc Priest is a little bit more complicated and you have to think about damaging mobs and managing your ramps, but then at the same time, like, you don't have to think about kicks, But because, like, there's so many abilities and being able to kick things feels so important that it just feels like a handicap that you don't have a kick, right? Like you just want to kick than not have a kick, even if it was just like some shitty long cooldown one. But at the same time, like giving a healer a kick is a responsibility. Like it's just one more difficult thing that they have to juggle on top of everything else they're already juggling. So it's like it's hard for me to be an advocate to say that I want Priest to have a kick, but with like sort of the arms race of making everything more difficult, it does kind of feel like, well, if every healer except Priest has them, and every single dungeon is gonna have so many different mobs that are dangerous, like, I mean, it feels bad to not have one, that's for sure.
Squishy, you have any thoughts?
I don't. I think it's only bad because the priest is the only class without those things. I think that's basically it. Like it's what healer priest the only spec without a kick. I think that's bad. I think they should have access to it. Yes, that adds more things, but I think it needs it. And realistically, I don't think they can prune these things out. Like, all the things that we're talking about here, I don't think they can. They can maybe, prune defensives. I think that's fair, but I don't think they can take all these like, these cool utilities out at this point because they're cool. Like, especially for, we are the top 1%. We shouldn't be the ones that Blizzard is catering to. I'm sure a lot of people in their delves, in their open world, they get rooted and they have their root break. I think that's, that's what they feel good breaking that. And I think that's what people want. Having more tools in any RPG, whether it's WoW or, Dark Souls or name another RPG that I can't think of right now. Like, I think that's what people want.
That's a great point. Actually, going back to what I said about priests and spatial paradox, and that before, let's say there was a high damage phase where you had to move a lot, right? Too fucking bad. You're a disc priest. You don't get to ramp. Like that's not a choice, right? Like you don't get to heal there. Like you're ramping in the non-movement parts, and then the other healers have to pick up the slack when there's movement. But now because spatial paradox exists, well, now you have that option of taking that spatial paradox, taking away the weakness that Disc Priest had, and then just being able to ramp during the most ridiculous, like dodging orbs, vacuuming the whole raid phase in Fyrak. But at the same time, Squishy is right. Like, while when you're in a competitive Mythic rating guild and you just DM the evoker slurs when he doesn't give you the spatial paradox in your raid wipes, that's the average priest experience now. For everyone else, that you get a spatial paradox and it feels cool. It's like if you're just in an average, whatever, you're pugging heroic and some, evoker gives you spatial paradox, you're like, hell yeah, this is awesome. This feels great. And it's like, I do think that the ability spatial paradox is a net positive for the average WoW player, but it does feel like just like this really annoying complication for, people who are Mythic rating. But maybe that's, unfortunately, this might be us just saying that we don't really like the direction that the very competitive WoW scene is going, and maybe we don't take it super seriously as much anymore. Obviously that's not so cut and dry, but
Yeah.
if you're that kind of player, and that's sort of what Thune might be saying here, is like, well, this is just not that fun for me. Like, I like WoW, like, I'd rather just play the game a little bit more casually, where I don't have to be like doing all these crazy things and having all these interactions and min-maxing all this stuff in order to raid.
He immediately went, at some point he goes, if I'm in an arms race with Echo and Liquid, then I'm completely out. Like, I'm no longer going to be raiding anymore.
Yeah.
If every single boss fight requires me to watch an 1.5 hour long Dratnos comprehensive video to be able to tell me every single possible thing that I ever need to know about a boss fight, it's just way too much for me.
And I don't think these things are mutually exclusive. Like, you can still have all this utility on classes and still have interesting but not overly punishing raid fights. It's just that's not what we've gotten recently, right? Like, there are avenues of mechanics in raids that they haven't explored. There's the communication mechanics. Information asymmetry is one that I like to point to. AKA, I know something that Tettles doesn't, and Tettles has information that I don't. And we need to communicate in order to, put the pieces together.
Like a
Mythic rating,
right?
Yeah, now the commenters are up in arms. Discord, communication, interaction. No.
For Mythic rating,
you're losing points.
For Mythic rating, I think it's fine. I don't for Heroic. I think I agree with the commenters. I agree with Blizzard. I don't know that necessarily belongs there, and that's okay. But for Mythic rating, I think that's one avenue that they still have not yet explored since Mechatork, because they're so scared of it because they put it in normal difficulty.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good point.
Like, Lords of Dread, they tried as well, and everybody used the Among Us weak aura, which was also a horrible solution. Like, Blizzard, make it in your difficulty where you expect people to communicate and we can talk again, kind of thing. So that's just kind of my take on it. I don't think these things are mutually exclusive at all. I think they can have, cool, flavorful classes that sure are a little hard to figure out, but I think there's enough resources at this point that that's fine. But still have raid encounters that aren't built for the only race to world first guilds, and we can have a happy, collaboration in the middle.
So that's obviously on, utility-based stuff. Do you think that, like, base classes still are... Do you think that base classes are too diluted in terms of rotations?
They're not my top priority, if I had to, say. I think they're fine.
Okay.
Like, they're fine enough for now.
Yeah, I think...
Like, realistically, if the tuning on some of the hardest content goes down, I don't think there's an issue. I think it's only a problem because the tuning on these, top end requires, maximum output, at which point then it's difficult. But with the raid buff that's coming in, gearing, the extra upgrade tracks, I do think that it's going to be... I think it's okay.
Any final thoughts on any of that before we move on?
Nope, good vid. Shout out to Thune. See you next year.
He'll be back. All right, guys. I saw this and I thought this was so funny. Some PvPers got into an argument about solo shuffle. This is my interesting thing of the week. So the tweet started off by Big Moran saying, "Let me be clear. I think 3v3 is cool. It's a valuable competitive experience that I wish more people could enjoy. However, the reality is that solo shuffle dwarfs every other game mode in sheer volume of players." And he cites some numbers and how many people are actually playing solo shuffle. At 1,800 plus, there are 5 times more solo shuffle players than 3v3 players. And then Sturge, who has been a heavy advocate for solo shuffle for a while, has now changed his mind and says solo shuffle unironically drives WoW PvP into the ground. If I wanted to play a login and hit queue game, I'd play literally anything else, not the game that requires me to spend $15 a month, $60 for every new expansion that I have to spend hours leveling and gearing to wait 30 minutes in a queue to have someone type 06 healer/DPS and go right back into another 30-minute queue. Dude, I saw this, and it's so interesting because these were the people that were like such heavy advocates for solo shuffle for PvP, and now, you know, you see them hating on it. It kind of makes me wonder like what it would look like for PvE if they brought it in. If would we end up feeling kind of a similar way where
So what is his art? So is what he's saying that solo shuffle came out and the average player enjoys it, and so most people are playing it, but he doesn't enjoy it, and because then the queue times are giga long now because nobody plays it, and that's bad.
yes, because fewer people are actually playing, kind of.
Because the average person likes solo shuffle more.
Well, no, the queue times are long for shuffle. The queue times are the average queue for shuffle is like 30 minutes. And that has fewer people playing in general is the thought process, and it's been driving.
Oh, I thought I remember reading on this post the numbers saying that way more people are playing shuffle than normal.
Well, yes, they're playing shuffle more than they were playing the threes bracket currently, right?
Right.
Yeah, and he also goes on to say, it's so sad seeing these numbers because just know it's not sustainable at all. PvP player base will lessen every single season, and our way of keeping them is, hey, you sit in a 30-minute shuffle queue. So while the shuffle is the most popular, the argument is that while shuffle is the most popular form of PvP, it's going to end up killing arena because sitting in 30-minute queues is going to end up killing arena, basically.
I mean,
but why though?
This might be a hot take.
Is it because they're splitting the player base? Like, I guess I'm trying to think
they don't
about
have enough healers. They don't have enough healers, so they end up sitting in queue forever.
But in threes, you don't just queue with no healer, right?
Well, the shuffle queues are 30 minutes, not the threes. The threes
why?
Threes queues are instant. Because threes is, if you have teams, you just get match made immediately. But the shuffle queues are super long because you're looking for a combination of a healer that is close enough to your rating, and there's not enough healers, and then you have to they have to be matched with 2 DPS that are close enough to your rating as well. And so then fewer people are PvPing now because of it too.
Maybe I just need to think about this more, but I don't really understand why solo shuffle would make the queues longer.
Because most of the time beforehand was sitting in LFG actually forming the groups, right? Where now this is match made, so now you're waiting to get enough people.
I mean, to put it in Mythic Plus terms, it's basically, instead of forming LFG, there's a solo queue for M+, except these more people prefer solo queue, and therefore you just have less LFGers.
Yeah, that's what people say, right? They don't want to LFG. They don't want to sit here and apply to groups. They want to just be able to, instead of pressing 30. I guess the way I see it, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but like, time doesn't just appear out of nowhere, right? Like, if it takes this long to find, because like in theory, right? Let's say you have two teams that you queue in threes, right? And you get instantly matched against each other, right? In theory, if those 6 people queued solo shuffle, they should get matched against each other and play instantly, right?
Yeah, but there's the bottlenecking. So since it's matchmaking you, right? There's the it's kind of like if we applied it to Mythic Plus, it would be like you waiting for a tank, right? You're gonna have to wait. You're gonna have to wait for a tank in LFG, or you'd have to wait for a tank in this system, right?
So if you're a healer, do you have instant queues in solo shuffle?
It's yes. Let's go with
so
yes.
basically, what's happening? The Mythic Plus equivalent is the mages and the Aug Evokers are saying they killed Mythic Plus because now the Feral Druids and the Ret Paladins get to cut ahead of them in the queue.
So Sturge is the healer though, and so Sturge gets.
Yes, I'm just trying to figure it out. I'm not trying to blame him because I mean I know this guy knows what he's talking about. I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yeah. It's kind of like that, and Sturge gets instant queues, but now there's fewer and fewer people are actively playing because the sitting in queue simulator is just not the game mode that they want to play, and so then they stop playing WoW because sitting in queue is pissing them off too much.
I mean, okay, this is my hot take. WoW PvP is dying, regardless of shuffle or not.
I think PvP is was dead regardless. Yeah.
Like we literally just talked about how the rotations are so complicated and there's so much utility in classes for PvE. You have to know all this shit for PvP on every class, including PvP talents. It's unreasonable. Like the barrier to entry to get into PvP is insane right now, and Blizzard has very clearly not put effort in other than like, oh, here's a new arena. It's the same thing every time. Like, and yes, it sucks. Like, I understand why people want solo shuffle because it's just convenience, and we've talked about convenience here as well. But it sucks to split up, the game mode. I think if something that I would say though, I think Blizzard kind of screwed up by making it solo shuffle and not like just a regular old queued game mode. Because you see in other queued game modes, like you can match a team of solos versus a team of threes with an MMR disparity fix. But
my hot take is that I think Mythic Plus killed Arena. And the reason I think that is because, like, more in the past, if you weren't raiding, what you would do outside of a raiding is, you'd PvP. That was like the only game mode, right? And that's what you kind of do. Now, if you want to play outside of raid, realistically, people now do Mythic Plus as their primary game mode, but that's neither here nor there. People then change from whenever they would go in PvP, now they would go and do Mythic Plus, because Mythic Plus is way easier to play casually as well. And PvP, not a casual game mode in the slightest. Yeah. That game mode requires 100+ hours put in of work before you even know what's going on, where, for better or worse, as long as you know how to pilot your character, you can kind of do a dungeon. You probably should know what the mobs are doing, but you don't have to. Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to PvP, it's a lot easier to go play an FPS game where the goal is to shoot the other person before they shoot you, right? Like, but while PvP, yeah, you need to do that, but like, what abilities do they have? What CCs do they have? The whole thing with the trinket, like having to deal with their healer. There's a lot more going on. It's like if you were to play Overwatch or Marvel Rivals and every character had 20 abilities instead of the 4 that they have.
Dude, League of Legends, right? And everybody's got like 10 abilities.
Exactly. Like that's what it is, right? Like there's that many characters with that many abilities that you have to know how long they last, like, what items they or like PvP talents they have, synergies, like it's crazy. PvP is crazy right now. And I think it's part of how fast the game has gone. Like, Growl, I don't know, do you do PvP in Classic at all? The game's a lot slower there.
Zero PvP, zero PvP. I like follow it and pay attention to it a little bit just because it's around me, but
I mean, you were at the Gurubashi Arena, so I mean, like,
sometimes you got to do what you got to do, but
yeah, it was just interesting to see that they were talking about shuffle killing Arena. Whenever I see it from the outside, and I'm just like, I feel like Arena's just already dead. I don't think it had anything to do with solo shuffle. I think it has to do with just the game itself.
In my opinion, I think Plunderstorm abilities Arena would be more interesting than current Arena, and way easier to understand.
That wouldn't feel like World of Warcraft, though.
It wouldn't. But I'm just as like an example. Like I quit PvP because I wasn't enjoying it because there's so much going on. I like PvP to be way more simple, way more telegraphed. Like, compared to other PvP games, it's a mess. It's so hard to figure out what's going on for someone not to know.
Now, what I will say is, I don't know if shuffle... How do I even describe this? I'm not sure if shuffle was the right answer, because while it is a good thing, I think, for the player base, especially for Arena players, was it really good to sack the 2s and the 3s bracket in the process? I don't know. Obviously, I don't know the answer to that, but it's kind of like an interesting thing because 2s and 3s literally died because of shuffle. And so
I'm of the opinion that shuffle kept the game mode going for longer. I think PvP would be even in a worse state if shuffle wasn't around. Because back in Shadowlands, all I remember is people saying PvP queue simulator. And now they're saying that about Mythic Plus, but like, I think shuffle saved the game mode for a while. I think it's still saving the game mode. It's kind of, but that's kind of my opinion. Kind of harsh, but
yeah, I think it's hard for any of us really to comment about PvP. Mainly because like I just enjoy Mythic Plus, and that's like what I want to do in the game, and I don't really enjoy PvP so much. And so I think saying that Mythic Plus killed it because it's so much better or more fun, or like PvP is too dog shit, like I don't know. I personally don't enjoy PvP, and I found the same problems that you guys did. I wanted to give it a try, and it was just so hard for me to learn, even as someone who's played a lot of games, in PvP before.
Yeah.
And I just gave up, and I really found Mythic Plus, and I enjoyed that. But I mean, to each their own, right? I'm not gonna, to anybody who enjoys their own game. I guess I was mainly thinking just about like the queue thing and the problems or whatever. But I mean, I think at the same time, though, I think PvP probably suffers from very similar issues that Mythic Plus and rating have, of just like the on ramp of you make a guy, you get to max level, it's so easy, you don't learn anything, you're mashing one button on like easy mobs that don't risk you at all, and then all of a sudden you get thrown into the arena and people are like, sapping you and killing you, and people are calling you dog shit, and they're like, oh, why don't you have this trinket, wrong build, and it's like the on ramping to any of the end game in WoW, I think, is like really, really not good, and really, I think, hurts all of the game modes.
It's kind of interesting. I think I've probably PvP the most out of all us three, and I was basically glad every single season in BFA and glad the first season of Shadowlands, and then I tried to Arena again whenever Shuffle came out, and I was like fucking near like 600 700 rating lower, because like exactly like you're talking about, just the knowledge barrier, the barrier to entry just knowledge wise is insane for Arena. It's like you have to know how each and every single character plays with your character and against your character, and you have to know how your character plays with each and every single war mode talent, and it's just it's the craziest thing.
Like it obviously sucks for the people that enjoyed 3v3. Like there's no doubt about that. Like for the people that enjoy that, it sucks. And I hope you get what you're looking for, but it's like based on the realistic trend of what Blizzard is doing, it kind of feels like they've, for the most part, abandoned a lot of PvP. Like you get class tuning, you get an arena every so often, but that's about it. And that is kind of sad.
I don't know. I mean, RBGs are also they added in RPG brawls, but I think the biggest issue with RBGs is that I think they should have given like new maps to RBGs, kind of similar to what they're doing to Mythic Plus for forever. Like they should have been doing like map rotations for RBGs. I think that would have been way cooler.
RBGs is really tough because that same sort of jump, right? Like you go into RBGs, you play against random people. It's like the most fun thing ever. Like just everyone's an idiot. You're running around. Then as soon as you play against a team of like 10 people that know like, oh, it's Cop Mogu. Okay, here's our comp. This person stands here. This person does this. You're just smoked. And it's like there's not really there's not enough people playing that there's this path of like, you're learning and they're learning and you're getting slightly better. It's just like it feels like you go like 2 games of winning and then all of a sudden you're just playing against people that know what's going on.
It's kind of why I think having that be like no voice, less coordination would be like a better thing. Like while you can, there's still a skill expression involved, right? Especially knowing what you're doing. But I think that like having that like ultra sweat group that's doing has perfect information, doing the absolute perfect thing every single time is a bit rough. Yeah, that was a cool thing I've seen this week. Ral, how's your classic raid been?
Classic WoW update might be the beginning of the end for OnlyFans.
Oh no!
Oh, Tyler won. He's been the champion of the classic WoW hardcore. He's been streaming every day. His viewers have been growing. He's becoming the war chief. So after our first Molten Core raid, there were some casualties. Managed to sneak in and yoink some loot, even though I wasn't on the main roster. Then they decided, let's take 2 people that don't know how to raid lead and make them raid lead an entire raid and force them to bring half of the raid that doesn't know what's going on. So they brought Tyler 1 and Mizkif as the 2 raid leaders. Tyler 1 was the first raid leader. He was actually doing very, very well. He made it to Baron Geddon, which is like, we'll call him like a mid-wall boss or whatever. Like, I mean, obviously this is classic, so all the bosses are 1 minute long and incredibly easy. But he
1 minute boss.
Basically, the boss has very few mechanics. One of the mechanics is the boss like pulses AoE, and the AoE ramps over time. And the other mechanic is it puts like a bomb on somebody and they got to run out of the raid. Very, very tough boss. And so essentially the boss was getting low and the boss started his AoE. And as the AoE started happening, everyone is running out. Boss is at like 3% health, 4% health. And Tyler 1 calls, no, stay in, fuck it, kill the boss, right? Because he's kind of trying to make content, right? He's kind of trying to have fun. Like, who's gonna, like, why play safe? You know, like, let's have a little fun here, you know, like, we're kind of crushing this, like, let's get the heart pumping a little bit. So he makes a call for everybody to stay in. The raid does not prefer their heart to be pumped at this moment. So while he's calling for everybody to stay in, everybody essentially doesn't stay in. And even though it was very, very easy for the raid to kill the boss, and while Tyler had a lot of mistakes going on, in terms of boss positioning, in terms of the call timing, in terms of the call being very reckless, at the end of the day, you know, a lot of things went wrong. Many, many brave warriors fell, including Tyler 1, including Peekaboo. I think Mir, who's like a pretty well-known PvPer. I think Waz might have died too. A bunch of very brave warriors died this day, and Tyler was basically like pretty sad about it. He was the most geared person in the raid. He was the main tank, and he wasn't sure what he was gonna do. Logged off. He doesn't stream on weekends. This was on a Friday. So then he comes back on Monday, and we're all wondering if he's going to continue, if he's going to go again, if he's going to make a new character. And he logs in, starts his got his go live screen and then he's in the World of Warcraft category, right? So everyone's like perking up. They're like, is he doing it? He said he wasn't going to come back, but is he going to come back? Turns on his stream after his intro song, then proceeds to just call every single person in the raid pussies and just shit talk every single WoW player. Completely crashes out, pulls up a list in a notepad of all the people in his raids POVs with their Twitch link, shouting out some of them who stayed in with him, and then calling out all of the other people, mostly pros. Like, he wasn't really trying to call out like noobs or whatever. Like, he was calling out people that were like well-known WoW players and just calling them pussies and being like, I played with you all this time, like I made this call, how could you do this to me? And then basically he just shunned the entire WoW community and then just switched to League of Legends and said he's never coming back. And so now our main protagonist is now defeated. So many people have died, and I think the interest in classic card. Yeah, there's the notepad.
Oh my god.
There's the notepad. Yeah, and he basically just says, you know, it's not worth it. I thought we were in this together. You guys left me to die. I'm never coming back. If I ever did come back, it would just be to grief you and try and kill your characters because you're that big of pussies. And then he left. He's gone. I think he's been basically the main driver of interest. Also, many big content creators have died, some of which are going again, some of which are not. But I would be very surprised if the guild makes it to BWL. Excitedly, we have Grubby and Lakari attempting to raid lead next week's raid. Grubby is too good of a gamer. I think what's my prediction is that Grubby's going to show up insanely well prepared, raid lead everyone to victory. It's going to be the most boring shit that everyone's ever watched, and then I think interest is going to start dwindling down, and then hopefully we get some big new patch announcements for retail.
Perfect transition time.
Do you think he'll come back for season 3 of Classic Hardcore, whatever that is?
If there is, bro, it would be hard to top this one. This one has been wild. I think he would, because I think he knows what he's getting into now, and he knows the people, and I think it would be really good. There's also talks of like if there is a season 3, because there was so many people, to do one Horde guild, one Alliance guild, and have them rivals.
Ooh, I like that.
But I mean, like, in order for there to be another season, there would need to be another fresh hardcore server. Yeah. And it's like, how many fresh hardcore servers are they really gonna like? Are they really gonna announce more fresh hardcore servers in a year from now? I mean, I love it. Like, I'm addicted to it. To me, it's some of the most fun shit ever. Like, but I don't know. And even then, though, like, I had a lot of fun in the last 2, but I don't know, you know, how many times can they do it before people get bored?
They could do it like PoE or Diablo, where they just merge this character after a while into mainline, like mainline.
Yeah, definitely, yeah, like a ladder,
and then just start a new season. Hey, it's a new season! Woo!
What if you had like Classic Hardcore, and instead of it being just through like vanilla, it was actually like you like started in BC or something.
They've talked about that.
Could be
I don't
something.
know. To me, yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything. I've never played TBC, so I don't know. So basically they announced the anniversary realms and that they were going to progress through TBC and Wrath. And I thought that was including hardcore because hardcore is one of the anniversary realms. Then they clarified and specifically said hardcore is only going to be vanilla and it's not progressing into TBC. So I'm guessing that they did some thinking and some figuring out if hardcore would work in TBC and basically decided that it wouldn't. And I don't know. I mean, I've heard a lot of things about the difficulty of TBC raids. And I mean, it's one thing about difficulty. Like, difficulty is one thing, but like being able to get through the raid without dying is another thing, right? Like, you know, you can say, oh, Ragnaros is an easy boss, because obviously it is, but like, making sure that you don't die or else you lose your character adds another layer of difficulty for sure. And I think like maybe there's some stuff in TBC that they just like won't be able to, you know, like thinking about, I don't know, like there's so many raid fights where, you know, you just send this guy off and let him die or whatever, you know.
I saw this really funny tweet from his wife. she was flaming Tyler. Clearly doesn't know anything about World of Warcraft. She goes, there are absolutely people that were playing with Tyler for viewership. He is bad at the game. He's a new player. He has zero comprehension of the game as a League player. Why else would they want to play with him? That was like, damn, she doesn't know anything about WoW.
So basically, that's a lot of the drama too, is like you have this big network of streamers, right? Some that are massive and some that are low, and it's like there's very clearly people who are like, oh, look, there's a 10K viewer streamer. I'm going to get in there, right? Like, I'm some Omega WoW player. I only have 50 viewers, but I know how to farm every fucking consumable, and I'll juice them up, and I'll be their bud. And it's like, there was some of that. And I feel like the problem is, when it comes to the raid in the specific situation, like, Tyler 1 kind of messed up. Like, while it's true that everyone would have stayed in, like imagine a situation where like, okay, the AoE is 7 seconds long, and he makes the call to stay in 2 seconds into the AoE.
That is crazy.
So right, so it's not even really stay in is the call, is go back in is the call, right? Like, and if honestly, even if he would have said that, maybe people would have turned around. But like, you know, when you're already running out of the AoE and then the call is to stay in, well, what do? You just run in and then hope your 3 attacks that you can get will make a difference. And it's like, I don't know. But to be fair, like, then you watch. So there's been a lot of like drama analysis and people watching POVs. Like there was this girl who was like, you know, somewhat new to Hunter. And again, I'm not blaming her. Like, we're bringing new players for this for fun. But like, she wasn't auto attacking the boss. And so you watch her POV. And so in this boss, you have to dismiss pets. And because like something happened, she wasn't auto attacking, and so like you watch her POV, and she's just kind of sitting there, you know, just sitting there for like 10 seconds, and it's like, you know, if any, I think Tyler underestimated, like, you know, when you have a bunch of new people that don't know what's going on, like, you know, this is Molten Core, right? Like, there's a reason that everyone says Molten Core is a fucking joke and Classic is a joke. It's because it is, right? Because you have raiders that are doing this,
yeah,
and that's okay. Like, that's the fun part. Like, it's fun to play with these people. And it's like, I think he just that's kind of where he was flaming the experienced players, because like the experienced players aren't going to make that mistake. Like they could have turned around and like killed it or whatever. But either way, I mean, it's a whole mess. There's many fingers to point and people to blame. And unfortunately, yeah, I think the fun and games of classic hardcore is going to come to an end soon.
Season 2, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Season 2 soon. We're back. Okay.
All right.
What are these comments? What are we looking at, Squishy?
Oh no, don't worry about the comments. Scroll.
Oh, okay.
It's basically just like, if you haven't heard the music we data mined it, fucking owns for this patch. And so I want to play this theme. It is
deafened the podcast listeners. I'm so sorry.
This is the soundtrack that plays in one of the raid bosses on a very specific mechanic. You're like, if you play the video as well, you can see, mute the video when you pull it up, but you're basically rolling around on a ball, and this music plays, and it's fantastic.
Dude, I think that everybody might be. Rest in peace to Earhaver. So whenever I clicked play, it was way too loud.
So yeah, they added a soundtrack to specifically this mechanic, and I think that's hella cool. They don't typically do loan music for mechanics a lot of the time.
I saw that there was a lot of different music that they were gonna have for pretty much all the bosses.
Yeah, Galawix is his own theme too.
Yeah.
It's like you got that jazz theming going on. It's so good.
I think that
Those
this
are
is
fucking-
probably one of the few raids that you could like actually just rip the raid's music itself and be totally fine without
Yeah,
having
if you like
to.
jazz,
Yeah.
give it a listen.
Do you just play with game sound on?
Yeah.
Oh
I don't.
gosh.
There's a lot
Um,
of audio-only cues that happen.
So I have effects on a little bit. I have effects quiet, no music. Sorry, I guess I thought you were talking about the music.
Oh no! I'm talking about.
I do have some effects on, yeah.
Oh, I don't have music.
I
on.
like.
Not.
I
You
find myself toggling sound a lot.
don't play with music on, right? Especially the game music.
No.
You're not saying Helios.
No, I would only play with music on if the music lined up with the encounters. That's the only time. Like there are certain other MMO raid encounters where the music lines up with certain things. Like you would know the length of a boss burn phase by the length of the music track that's playing. Or a mechanic will occur at the same point in the soundtrack every time.
That sounds like some Final Fantasy shit for sure.
That is fun. It's every other game except WoW. Like WoW is the only game that does not do looping music. And for those who do not know what that is, if you've ever played Halo 3, in the final mission there is a Warthog run. Basically the music loops until you pass a certain checkpoint. Once you pass that checkpoint, the music moves on to the next section of music, at which point it adds more tension or instruments or anything like that. Or, adds in the main theme. A lot of games add in looping music.
Yeah.
Because they want to present, have certain pieces of track play at certain times to make their encounters better. WoW does not do that. WoW plays the entire track from start to finish, at which point it will fade out and then fade back in from the start, which is the complete opposite of climactic. Which is why I don't think a lot of people use music.
Fun fact, when I played an MDI, I had different I think I might have mentioned this on the podcast before. I had different playlists for different dungeons. And so like when a dungeon would start, I would start play on the playlist, like behind the bubble or whatever. And then that it would sort of have that same effect that Squishy was talking about, where like you are you kind of get an idea for how fast you're going, and you get an idea for like things that are coming up or things to remember, because your brain sort of does that, right?
Yeah.
Like it links like audio things. Like you ever have that moment where like you listen to a song and you immediately like your brain takes you back to like a moment in time when you listen to that song with
A lot of songs are like that for me. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. No, yeah, tons. And so I think that was something funny that I remember I did for MDI practice, was I had a different playlist for every dungeon, and I would like run it while I was playing.
Tell you watch speed running. You know about beat counting. Beat counting.
Right? Yeah, I mean that has nothing to do with world. Yeah.
Oh, I mean it does in a way. It's not, you're not counting specific beats, but if you have music that always starts at the start of a phase, you know that things are going to line up at the specific time.
Yeah, I mean
which is
people
part of
using
why I think
SM64 speedruns, I think, are the ones that I know. Happens in a lot of different games, but yeah,
exactly.
SM64
Like
is the one
things are going to happen at a specific time in the music, so you don't need external factors to have it. But I wish they would do more of these. I think it's really cool.
Okay. I think that's going to be it for the podcast this week. For Q&A, we had a question in regarding Dragonflight talent update and how that ended up affecting the game. Basically, it was saying that it wasn't healthy for the game, but we ended up covering that a lot with the power creep talk with Thune's video. So we ended up covering that this week anyways. Any final comments, thoughts, words, anything else we got to say?
Nope, another banger as usual. We're getting up to that time. What do you guys think? Do you think we're gonna get a patch release date in the next week before next episode?
I'm surprised we don't have one yet.
Yeah, me either. We should have one by now, I feel like.
Typically, it comes out about 2 weeks before the patch launches, right?
I mean, people are suspecting it's either next week, the week after for the patch, and I feel like if it's next week, we need something like now.
Yeah. I was thinking it was going to be like late February, but now I'm thinking it's maybe early March. But where's the patch? I don't know.
I feel like typically they announce these things earlier as of recently. This is like the first time that they kind of feel like they've delayed their announcement for a while.
Yeah, they've been giving us like the roadmap, right, too, and then they'll. I don't know. It's a little bit strange. I feel like we should have already had it. Maybe they're gonna. Maybe it's getting delayed. Maybe there's a reason that it hasn't been announced.
Maybe.
I don't really know. That's kind of why they wait as long as possible to announce it, right? Is so if they have to push it back. Yeah, exactly. If they have to push it back, they can.
Yeah.
All right. Could be it for us this
Bye-bye.
week. GG's.